Viel Schlimmeres, ja. Sehr viel Schlimmeres. Tatsächlich.
Yeah, it is. It's also a little bit like we are talking to ourselves instead of...
All right. Are we ready to start? Okay. So, good afternoon to this session on reconciliation and democracy as catalyst of change in the Balkans. It's a long title, a very heavy title. And let's see if it's true. Let's see if it will be a catalyst or it can be a catalyst. My name is Harald Schenker and I'm a country director of Forum ZFD. It's a German NGO dealing with reconciliation and peace building, mainly by dealing with the past, one of the heavy issues in the Balkans. But this is not about me, so let me introduce briefly the panelists. So we have First Deputy Prime Minister Artan Grubi here, who will be the keynote speaker. Then we have the Deputy Prime Minister of Kosovo, Mr. Recepi. Then we have, oh my God, titles. Director in the sector, General Secretariat of the, no, external, did I? Well, it's what the thing said. Okay. In yes, Ambassador Angelina.
If you say Angelina, everybody knows.
Exactly. I was going to say this is actually a panel of doers, so you know. Then we have the State Secretary in the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Livia Loy. We have the EU Special Representative for Bosnia-Herzegovina. No, sorry, the EU Special, my God, the EU Special Representative for the Western Balkans, Mr. Miroslav Lajčák. Yeah. I'm getting myself into trouble here. Undersecretary for Relations with States of the Holy See, Miroslav Wachowski. We have the German Special Envoy for the Western Balkans, Manuel Sarrazin. And the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Christian Schmidt. Also, last but not least, Secretary General of RICO, Albert Hani. I think I've got everybody now. This cost us half the time. So, Deputy Prime Minister, you may start.
But is this work? Yes, it's work. So thank you, dear Harald. Thank you very much. It's great to see all of you, dear panelists, dear guests, ambassadors, dear Mayor, Ramis Merko. Thank you for hosting us in Struga. Dear colleagues, ministers, members of Parliament. I would like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the invitation to participate at this year's PFD. So I will be I changed my speech completely while driving to Struga, to be honest with you. I had something else written by staff. I decided to have something else. Welcome, Mr. Ahmeti, as well. Një kështu për përkthim për kryetarin. Ramis, për përkthim për kryetarin, që ka mundsi. Yes, he would need some translation. So, let me start. The dictionary says that reconciliation is the restoration of friendly relations or the actions of making one view or belief compatible with another. So I guess we were friends, then we got into an argument, and now we are getting back to being friends. Can't remember much of this in the Southeast Europe, in Western Balkans, no matter how deep and how far we go into history. Were the Albanians ever friends with Macedonians, Serbs, Montenegrins, Greeks? Were the Macedonians ever friends with Bulgarians, with the Greeks, with the Serbs? Did the Serbs have any other friends in the Balkans or anybody else? From the time that I remember, and I'm aware, my entire life is in conflict. Since I've known of myself, there is trouble and never a dull moment in the Balkans. Tito died. Breakup of Yugoslavia started and lasted for almost 20 years with wars in Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Kosovo, Macedonia, like mortgage installments, never-ending and very painful. So open issues between all of our countries remain a never-healing wound and source of despair, and also a spring of possibilities for political manipulation and maintaining power. Installing fear and inventing enemies has shown a very productive way to grasp power and at the same time to maintain status quo with no progress whatsoever. We lived with the fear that the Albanians will take this country elsewhere until we were forced to be courageous and make decisions to beat our fears. We ended the war with the peace agreement that finally made the country loyal towards its citizens, and as a response to that, it resulted that citizens returned that loyalty of the state with loyalty towards the state. We live with the fear that the Greeks will take away the history, and that will be the Armageddon. We are now living with the fear that the Bulgarians will assimilate us in the 21st century, even though they failed 21 centuries to do so. Our opposition in our country has mastered in summing all of the fears to benefit their power-grasping agenda. I don't want a return to the state of the captured state again. None of us lost anything from Ohrid Agreement. None of us lost anything from the Prespa Agreement. None of us will lose anything from the good neighborly agreement with Bulgaria. The state, the region, and all of us won almost all. One more additional step is needed to completion. But let me be very clear, unequivocal. Nobody can dispute the existence of the Macedonian language, Macedonian people, and the existence of our state. So no judgment day will happen. The world will not cease to exist the day after we make the necessary decisions. I didn't plan or didn't want to sound vague and tick the box with another "we should" speech. I came before you with this speech. So be careful what you wish for, it may come true. We accepted all the wishes and preconditions of Vomero Dipomene to vote for the constitutional amendments. We went even steps forward. Beside the readiness to leave the government, we offered our resignations, removed all other conditions, and now, today, in front of you, I also say we ask the removal of the nonsense technical Persiano government from the law on government so that it doesn't represent any obstacle in the future. I wonder, is there any other wish that the genie could fulfill? We saw, we heard, we read that the opposition in our country, Vomero, doesn't have a problem with the constitutional change, doesn't have a problem with the inclusion of the Bulgarians in the constitution, that does not wish for, does not require early parliamentary elections, that does not take into consideration the notary signed statements by their own members of parliament. But all they wished for was that the Albanians and DUI leave the government. So, as the Americans would say, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. Therefore, I'm not really confident what the topic of this panel is, that reconciliation and its dictionary meaning is the solution or what we really need. What we need is a total reset of a generation and say enough is enough. We haven't achieved reconciliation for centuries. That's why we need to be the generation of leaders that will decide just to move on, to go forward. Embrace Western set of values, and do all of this before all of us move to some other place and get replaced by someone else, who yet is to reconcile and join the never-ending cycle. To wrap it up, change in the Balkans will start when we see the ballot box as our own family saving account and not as an ATM. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thanks for this very emotional speech. It is, well, it changes a bit my notes. But in fact, what you're saying is proof that, you know, in order to move forward, you still need to face the demons of the past somehow. And this is one of the issues of reconciliation. The other is that whether you call it reconciliation or conciliation or finding a solution or whatever, it needs a culture of dialogue. And this has kind of disappeared in many of our contexts. And the question is how to get it back, how to deal with these processes in a way that they make sense, that we move forward. So I would like, in a first round, if possible, all of you to make a few comments to that without me asking concrete questions. And then in a second round, we would get to more, more concretely towards the issues in the Western Balkans. So, Deputy Prime Minister, may I ask you to start?
Thank you. My English is not so good, and I will speak Bosnian, Serbia, Croatian, Montenegro, as you like.
Honorable high-ranking officials, colleagues, and distinguished guests, I am highly honored to be with you today at this important panel dedicated to reconciliation and democracy as catalyst of change in the Balkans. Before we deal with the topic of today's meeting, allow me to look back on the work of our government and on my personal involvement in the field of human rights and the rights of non-majority people in Kosovo. As someone who spent his whole life in Kosovo, even before war, during war events, and after the war with my whole family, as someone who is not Albanian nor Serbian, and as someone who dedicated himself to the fight against discrimination, emancipation, education, and integration of non-majority people in our country. As a great fighter for human rights, even when the voice of this topic could not be raised, not even in the place where we live, nor in the institutions where you work. The government of the Republic of Kosovo, headed by Prime Minister Kurti, is committed to achieving true changes in Kosovo, which contribute to the further building of a democratic society, the rule of law, and the promotion of human rights for all citizens. During the last 2 years of government, we achieved visible results in the field of democracy and the rule of law, internationally recognized, such as Transparency International, where in the field of fighting corruption, Kosovo achieved a result ranking 20 positions higher compared to the last 2 years. For 2 years in a row, we are now in the first in the region of progress in the field of rule of law, according to the World Justice Project, as the second in the world. We are now the Constitution of Kosovo guarantees the rights and freedom foreseen by international instruments for the protection of human rights. The highest legal act of our country gives priority to these rights over laws and imposes harmony between internal legislation and basic rights. No country in the region, nor in the wider region, provides protection and rights to non-majority communities as Kosovo does. With a guaranteed seat in the parliament, Kosovo not only protects minority communities, but also promotes their rights through a share in state decision-making. I believe the reconciliation is key to the progress of our region, and it is necessary to face the past in order to create a sustainable future, respecting the specificities and diversity of various ethnic groups and religions, maintaining a society in which all citizens have equal rights. I personally believe in these values and fight for them every day, and I have a lot of room to work in this direction, following the implementation of our laws in institutions both at the local and national level. Precisely for this reason, as Deputy Prime Minister for Human Rights and Minority Rights, I dedicated myself to promoting equality, justice, and inclusion in Kosovo. Our government, first of all, our Constitution recognizes that human rights are universal and indivisible, and that their protection is essential for building a democratic society. Through the implementation of relevant legislative measures and the improvement of institutional mechanisms, we strive to ensure that human rights are respected in all segments of society. Thus, we will strengthen our institutions, which is prerequisite for strengthening and developing democracy. An important step towards reconciliation and democratization is dealing with the past, one of the most difficult and painful topics. Our government is actively working on the transitional justice process to ensure that the perpetrators of serious human rights violations are brought to justice, while providing justice for the victims, despite their religion or nation. This is a complex process that requires deep analysis, openness, and cooperation. But we are determined to face the past in order to build a better future for us all. The wars in the former Yugoslavia are over. Our societies still live in accordance with their narratives. There have been no formal apologies yet, nor there has been any acceptance or invocation of responsibility for the committed crimes and genocide. Despite the fact that the international and state courts dealing with war crimes, they did very little to promote reconciliation between the nations that were in war all these years. Democracy is a fundamental value that shapes our vision for the Balkans. All of us present here must be committed to building and strengthening democratic institutions, the rule of law, and political participation. This implies the creation of conditions for free and fair elections, the protection of freedom of media and expression, as well as the strengthening of civil society and political diversity. We profoundly stand for it. The rule of law is the foundation of every society, and democracy is what strengthens institutions and citizens' trust in their fairness. The inclusion of citizens in political processes and decision-making is crucial for a democratic society that serves the interests of all citizens: Albanians, Serbs, Bosniaks, Turks, Roma, Ashkalians, Egyptians, Goranians, Montenegrins, Croats, and others. We are, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, Kosovars. And foremost, we are human beings, and then we are divided into different national communities, specific with special cultures, traditions. We speak different languages. But these are the values and wealth of one state, proof of a true multi-ethnic Kosovo, which sharing all the good and bad with our neighbors, respecting diversity values. In addition to all of the above, we must face challenges that threaten democracy, such as corruption and nepotism. Our government is committed to fighting against this negative phenomena by strengthening independent institutions and establishing clear accountability mechanism. We will present our vision by the end of the year by creating an anti-corruption strategy. We have a very long way to go, but we will not give up on this. Only through transparency, integrity, we will restore the trust of our citizens in the institutions on the entire territory of our country, which is in the last 10 years has been quite shaken by various corruption scandals and nepotism. In addition, it is extremely important to deal with the issue of economic development in the Balkans. The development of our countries in the region is crucial importance for progress. The achievement of the main highway that has a strong influence on reconciliation between communities, the unimpeded exchange of goods and capital, the free movement of people, border reliefs, are of special importance for the establishment of new and long-term bridges between people and communities. So we will build good neighborly relations and take stable steps along the path of the European family. And this is the only way out for all our countries. We have no other alternative. Under the auspices of the Berlin process, we want to achieve that, turning towards a future to which we belong. And that is definitely the European Union. I believe that, dear friends, reconciliation and democracy are not just abstract ideas. They are key to building stability, peace, and prosperity in the Balkans. Together with our international partners, I mean the USA, Great Britain, Germany and France, and other brotherly countries will continue to work towards the achievement of these goals, towards the European Union. Thank you for your attention. I would like especially to thank my friend Bujar Osmani for the invitation to be, for me to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, there's two remarks, one technical. We need to finish this panel at 5 o'clock, so I would appeal to you to keep the statements as short as possible. The other one is a content one. All things you just said, Deputy Prime Minister, they don't, I mean, in parallel, there's still a hot conflict going on. So it's somehow a proof, or to me it's an argument that these processes of reconciliation, of talking to each other, have to happen in parallel. They cannot be hijacked by daily political or other kinds of crises. And they take time.
They take a lot of time. That's the problem.
Let's hear about that. Floor is yours.
I want to make it easy for the...
I don't think your microphone is on.
Here I am. Is it better?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Yes, it's I want to make it easier for the moderator because we heard extremely important points on democracy and reconciliation, very important. I don't think any of us would deny the importance, but and both have to be really nurtured very consciously by all levels. it's like a marriage. I don't want to bring marriage in here. I leave that usually to Eddie Rama to talk about marriages. But it's true that it needs a lot of... And he talks about never marrying. But it's the point you made, Harald, early on also. It's about how to bring back the culture of dialogue, I think, is an extremely important, apart from this. And I was just thinking also, listening to the two deputy prime ministers, we will come very, very quickly at a point, not just in the region, this is also for European Union and elsewhere, where dialogue is not a common good anymore. And I think this, and we see that. I look at our special representative Miroslav working daily and night on dialogue, and many people ask, yeah, what dialogue? But he is doing the most essential part of trying to work out differences through words, through action, but through peaceful action. And listening to each other. We are actually now, I'm from the Netherlands, but I'm European, okay? So I'm not speaking for the Dutch public, but we are actually teaching now Dutch children at primary and secondary school how to listen to each other again. Because they come from an era where through social media and elsewhere, you're just used to talk and that's it. And then you shut down, instead of listening and arguing and agreeing to disagree. The Prespa agreement was an agreement not about everything, it was said this morning. It was very often also, in the end, agree to disagree, but we have decided to live together. We have made a very conscious decision to live together. That is, for me, what such kind of peace agreements radiate. The togetherness in our difference, in our diversity. And then I will just end with one word. That is what the European Union is about. You know, our 27 representatives of member states spend 24/7 in dark council rooms, talking. But they always find a solution to a problem, even if it takes long, because they listen to each other and they try to accommodate. And that brings the big compromise mentality of I listen to you, you listen to me, and we find a way out. So this is what I want to inject in this debate, because I'm afraid if we don't consciously work on this nurturing of culture of dialogue, we will lose it too rapidly, because things happen very quickly in our lives these days.
Thank you very much, and I'm afraid you're very right. Maybe I have only one word to add what you said, and that's vision. We need a vision for the region, but also for the EU, for
we have a vision for the region, and I hope that the leaders in this region also have a vision for them, for their countries.
Okay, thank you. State Secretary, would you?
Thank you very much. Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here, and thank you also for your statements, which really came from the heart. And you were saying we should concentrate a little bit on the basics to begin with. So I want to underline that we feel that reconciliation and peace are actually prerequisites for a functioning democracy. So, and vice versa, democracy, rule of law, and respect for human rights are preconditions for peace and stability. So government by people can only work if the people also have a sense of community. Without dialogue, no reconciliation will happen, and without reconciliation, no sense of community and social cohesion can develop. So in that sense, we feel genuine and continuous dialogue is really the basis for reconciliation and the key also for prosperous societies at peace. In that sense, dialogue and reconciliations go really hand in hand. And what sort of dialogue are we talking about? Dialogue must be grounded in the acknowledgement of the grievances also of the other, of the victims of a conflict. Dialogue is a process that must lead to measures that establish the historic truth, provide also for justice, and repair the damages on all sides. But it also has to prevent the reoccurrence of violence. So these four pillars, truth, justice, reparations, and guarantees for non-recurrence are really essential parts of a true dialogue. In the Western Balkans, every family has its own story to tell, but often it's rather than talking at each other that we should really talk to each other, with each other. That's more winning, brings you more forward. But this requires, you said it, vision. It requires also wisdom and courage. Courage also includes, of course, that you need the courage to admit to your own faults and mistakes. I think also what kind of reconciliation is necessary. The reconciliation process, in our view, needs to be inclusive to bear fruit. So it needs to include women in particular, it needs to include the youth, and it needs to include the civil society. The political leaders are of course very important, but they should not be alone in this endeavor. And ensuring the respect of minorities and promoting multicultural values are at the core of any reconciliation. Hence, we feel it's our collective responsibility to promote inclusivity regionally and beyond. And this is more true so ever today with a new war in Europe. I think this should really be a wake-up call to all of us and show us the urgency to really promote mutual respect and respect of our common values. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And to pick up your last sentence, I've heard this in the discussions earlier today that, the war is a wake-up call. I hope deeds will follow from this. But what you said it sounds a bit like, like squaring the circle. Dialogue is a very multi-layered animal, and it's extremely difficult to manage. Artan said that people were not necessarily friends here in the region forever, if you want. I don't know if it's necessary to become friends. It's necessary to agree that you want to live together. Mr. Lajčák, dialogue is your daily bread and butter, so maybe you enlighten us on some aspects of it.
Yes, indeed, but yes, first of all, Deputy Prime Minister, thank you for your speech. Very powerful, very authentic, very important. And I would like to build my short presentation on 3 words. The word number 1 is past. Part of my mandate asked me to help the region to overcome the legacy of the past. Unfortunately, there is still too much past in the present, which prevents this region from moving towards the future. Of course, the Yugoslav wars left many wounds, but it still looks like for some politicians, scratching the wounds is more important than healing the wounds. And you should look at what Europe was able to do 5 years after the end of the World War II, to lay the foundations of the European Union, overcoming the legacy of the past and building the European project. So my first message to the regional politicians would be, leave the past to historians. You have not been elected to change it. You have been elected to change the future for better. The second word is compromise. It's the culture of compromise that made the European Union the most successful integration project of the history of humankind. The fact that it does not mean that someone has to lose for me to win, that there is a win-win solution. And it's based on what was already mentioned by Angelina, by you, on the dialogue, on listening, on trying to find ways forward which we can all subscribe to. So here, in this region, consensus is still a bad word. It's weakness. I must prevail. That means somebody else must lose. So my second message to the politicians, please believe there is a win-win solution. There is a win-win way forward. It has been tested and it has worked well on a daily basis. It would be very good if it becomes a norm also in the Balkans. And the third and last word is the one that you just mentioned, vision. Nelson Mandela used to say, it always looks impossible until it's done. And I would add, for impossible things to be done, it takes vision and it takes courage. And the country of our host, North Macedonia, is the best example. For how many years we have been listening that The name issue is a problem that will never be solved. And it took leaders with the vision and with the courage, and they solved the problem. So we should not be afraid, we should not be looking for excuses. We hear too many excuses, why this or that cannot be done. Everything can be done. So my last message again for the politicians here would be, and Angelina said it, you have the vision. European Union offered you a great vision, the best possible vision, membership in the European Union. Prove to your people that you are able to turn this vision into reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, your last sentence, I fully agree, but you know, there are two sides to every story as well. So in my experience, it's also to the European Union to show at times that it's ready, that it's willing to engage in this process. Maybe, Mr. Wachowski, a perspective coming from a background with a let's say longer-term perspective.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers of this third edition of the Prespa Forum for Dialogue for the invitation. The Holy See has been participating in this important international conference since its inception to reaffirm its closeness to the Balkan regions, which is among its priorities, and its support for the European integration of all Balkans countries. Such integration is a key to the stability not only to the region, but also for the entire European continent. I would like to focus primarily on the first part of the proposed theme for this panel, namely reconciliation as a catalyst for change in the Balkans. Reconciliation is a topic of great importance in Christianity and in various forms also in other religions as well. However, it is also a fundamental issue in secular context, particularly in politics, where daily challenges involve representing diverse entities, seeking feasible solutions for sometimes conflicting demands. Politics, therefore, involves the process of resolving conflicts and tensions and faces the challenge of coexistence among different groups. Undoubtedly, reconciliation is a catalyst for change in the Balkans, and religious denominations can play an important role and privileged role in this complex and challenging process. During his visit to Sarajevo in 2015, Pope Francis stated, referring to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but applicable to the entire region, "We are all aware that there is a long way yet to go. Let us not be discouraged, however, by the difficulties, but rather continue with perseverance along the way of forgiveness and reconciliation. While we seek to recall the past with honesty, we, thereby learning the lessons of history, we must also avoid lamentation and recrimination, letting ourselves instead be purified by God, who gives us the present and the future. He is our future. He is the ultimate source of peace." End of quotation. Pope Francis also stated in his letter Fratelli Tutti, he offered a proposed itinerary for the reconciliation of peoples, where we need peacemakers prepared to work boldly and creatively to initiate processes of healing and renewed encounter. And the Pontiff asserts that a peace process which does not have an endpoint, does not conclude with a signing agreement, but begins with truth and the inseparable companion of justice and mercy. The craftsmanship of peace derives from collective work and not from homogenizing society. The path to better coexistence always implies recognizing that the other has a legitimate perspective, seeing the opponent as a part of a family, as well as Pope affirms, if we only could view our political opponents or neighbors in the same way we view our children, our spouse, mother, or father, how good would this be? The proposal of the Holy Father is based on gospel, the tradition of the Church, and recent positive experiences of reconciliation, such as the one witnessed during his visit to Colombia. Governments and societies, including those in the Balkans, should see in this chapter of Fratelli Tutti a proposal to heal wounds among brothers with whom we share history, present, and also the destiny. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Picking up your statement about seeing in the opponent a person, not the enemy. This is something Germany has, well, in the last decades put very high on its agenda, dealing with its past, learning from the past, and as a representative of Germany for the Western Balkans, Mr. Sarrazin, where do you see movement in these issues in your daily dealings?
Well, in my former time as an MP, together with Christian Schmidt, or actually in opposition to him, at that time, I was dealing a lot with Poland. And actually, to understand the reconciliation between Poland and Germany, you have to learn first that the story about Germany was so great in dealing with the past started when the churches started writing letters to each other in the 70s, 60s and 70s. Second, when the momentum came of the Iron Wall falling down, it was pragmatism which brought reconciliation. The Polish opposition, or then the Polish new government, was clever enough to know they will never be free when Germany is not reunified, because there would be Russian soldiers in Eastern Germany to invade in Poland. So the most positive on the German reunification was the country, which was still denied by its borders and existence until like 1 year before by Germany. It was not because they were only loving or Christians, it was pragmatism. They knew we will only be free if our neighbor is reunified. Pragmatism. And I think sometimes in this region, especially in the moment, this pragmatism is missing. Second, in Germany we have a sense of rule of law, which is underlined and subsumed in different points. A probability of means, using effective means, and having, we call it Verhältnismäßigkeit, a balance of means, is part of rule of law. This is different in a democracy from not a democracy. And I urge everybody in this region who talks about rule of law to have also these three means in mind. Third, I sometimes have the feeling in this region that everybody has a lot of time. Look at what's happening in the world. Time is running out, perhaps. If you miss this historical chance for getting an irreversible path of all the 6 in the region to go to where Angelina and Miroslav described, perhaps you will not have this chance so soon again. And this means for all 6.
Thank you. Well, you made a point for pragmatism, and I totally agree with that. I think it also implies to understand the historic moment and the historic chance, which in Germany was the point, was the case at that moment in history. In opposition to Mr. Sarrazin.
Sorry. If Christian will allow me. The Poles saw the historic momentum and gave us the chance. In 1950, the French saw the historic momentum for inviting us to Europe again and gave us the chance. So perhaps in the region you should start to see the historic momentum and give your neighbor also the chance.
Thank you. Do you agree with him?
Of course he has to.
Not only because I have to.
Yeah, it works, it's okay.
Okay. I agree, and I would like just to...
And higher.
It's working, just keep it higher.
Yeah,
put it
put
higher.
it, not put it a bit higher.
High.
You see United Nations and European Union hand in hand.
Hello?
No, if you put it here, it will work. No, that's easier.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Double.
Thank you. Just wanted to come, Deputy Prime Minister, to your keynote speech. And I would like just taking an opportunity with my former, we both have been members of parliament in Germany. This parliament as well cares a lot for trying to get an impulse for the unification development here in the Western Balkans. So today they will have decided about support to Northern Macedonia. I would like to underline we both are not voting because we are here, have been members, but to be assured that everybody in Germany and in the center of the political spectrum, this means him, governing coalition and the main opposition, will support exactly what you define about language, cultural identity, and diversity. And I think this is, if you report it from the Tito Times, the switch we have and we have to do from brotherhood in unity into united in diversity. I think this is the European Union motto. So we have to manage to understand that this does not mean that every structure has to be the same. I think the art is political art, that we see a way to give the people an opportunity to feel identity conserved, but not against the others.
Yes.
So this sounds very simple. It's very complicated, we know. It takes time, but where to start? We all could tell a lot of experiences where we say this has not worked out, and just to say the situation in the north of your country is showing that we have to work a lot on this. But first, I think we have to address the political class. They have to understand that just looking on their own interest will not deliver a sustainable development in this region. This is a harsh word, but we have to say this. We feel there are some starting and doing very well in this context, so I'm very optimistic. The second, about the people, the different people. This is not a problem. People in the Western Balkans are like people in all other parts of Europe. They want to have a peaceful, sustainable situation where they can bring up their children and the family, have a good place for work. So it is, I think, on us to activate these possibilities in my situation, which is not only by you complicated to describe, because it should be an outgoing one, is I have now implemented.
So thank you. I've implemented, and not an invitation, but somehow you could say, and some expectation to the parliaments that they open their way to discuss issues with younger people and with the civic society, not distincting between are you Serb or Croat or Bosniak, or are you another, to keep the terms of the Dayton Constitution, but just to say, let the civic people ask and start to give a proposal for legislative issues which are affecting everybody, beyond the question where has living coming from, social issues and so on. So we have to generate something more like this, and we have to accept that there must be a possibility to find for people themselves to find their identity as they want to conserve. So I think this is manageable, and indeed, European Union is the best example. Could anybody, you refer to 1950, imagine that the best friends in Europe are now the French and the German? If you, not the politicians, not because they have to say this, but ask the people. The people in all surveys, if you ask the French, who is our most important and best neighbor and friend, they say the Germans. And if you ask the Germans, they say the French. This is Erbfeindschaft. For 1,000 years, some wanted to declare this is this is our enemy, and this is over. So why shouldn't this be possible in a steady approach in the Western Balkans? I think the message of European Union that integration means that you can lower the identity and the need of frontiers is manageable. Yes, there are problems. Yes, we have to work on it. But this is, I think, the start of the understanding. And the second, not only the top politicians, but the youth. We are, and I see that we make a lot of mistakes, and those who are deciding about education in the Western Balkans should better look to give the young people the opportunity to decide on themselves what their view on the world is. They have the right to do it. If I'm looking in the country I'm having some responsibility, I see different curricula for those of Croat background, of Serb, of Bosniak, and it is not to celebrate their own heroes. I would like to come to what the Patriarch in Belgrade last year said. You are sometimes have been told to say, honor the victims of your people before you can honor the victims of the others. He said, I turn it. Honor the victims of the others before you can then honor the victims of your own people. I think this is the key message, and we should work to try it. I'm basically optimistic this is possible.
Thank you very much. Now, you mentioned youth a few times. We have Albert here, who's representing an organization that works with youth, so.
Yes, thank you very much, Karol. Indeed, I don't know if I should go in one shot now, because we are almost 5, and give all the key points there. But let me start with really full words of appreciation for the government of North Macedonia, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for organizing for the 3rd time the Prespa Forum, and having also RICO being part of these events, of these gatherings, of I call it Friends of the Western Balkans. I see a difference when we talk about youth in regards even to the conference, as the first time in Prespa we were organizing the side event. Nowadays, in the 3rd time, we see that really the organizers, not just that considered youth to be part of one small part of the agenda, but they consider it as a cross-cutting topic, a horizontal issue, which I see it incorporated in also all the agenda, which for us in RICO it's extremely important, because we try to bring the regional perspective, of course, in all the talks where politics actually decides about youth. Yes, there are a lot of challenges, there are a lot of also opportunities, a lot of fears among youth, and it's not just education, there are many other things that are mentioned here, from corruption to health and so on and so forth. I don't want to continue more, because the list would be long. In any case, the cross-cutting topic of youth, it's a very important thing, because in this way, I mean, in the way that we talk today, and incorporate youth in our agenda, we actually give hope to the youth that yes, they are considered in big discussions. From the other hand, it's not only the talks, it's also about the dialogue, it's about the hard talks that you do, actually the leaders of the region of Western Balkans do. In the hard talks, I'm referring to the talks where courage is needed, where decisions like Prespa agreement are needed to be brought, and this is also giving hope to the youth. It's giving also perspective that yes, it's not so hard as they think, or they are being projected from all over. As you know, all the narratives, wherever you see, be it in the books, in the media, wherever among us, it all shows that we see each other as enemies. And this is something that we really, I think, need to change. We cannot change it until we think of reconciliation and peace building as just a flashy word that we can use in every nice conference. We, in fact, I mean, I personally work, I'm dedicated to peace building and reconciliation all my life. I even have a feeling that we created a cliche or even an animosity of the word. When you mention today peace building and reconciliation in the region, people would start saying, oh, no, don't do activities in this. We are peaceful, we are doing everything good. However, youth is actually in need to wait from the leaders to cooperate better. I'm saying this because in our shared futures research that we do, they say that the youth actually sees the integration into European Union as a key factor for peace. However, they point out that the cooperation in regional level among the leaders, it's necessary in order for them to see a way out of the crisis that we are now. And admit it or not, I will be short, Harald, admit it or not, we are in a crisis mode, and we are in a mode where we actually project a lot of fear among youth. All these crises, wars, conflicts, in energy, in whatever field you mention, we are living in a crisis mode, and it's a big confusion for youth. They mention it in all the reports that we have done. We need really to understand them, give them opportunity, give them meaningful participation in decision making. This is something that was requested by them on the last Berlin summit. They literally request meaningful participation, which doesn't mean that it's just about ticking the box somewhere. Last point, Harald, it's the point that I want to make, and I always say, is the fact that youth are actually paving the road for leaders in the Western Balkans to cooperate better. What I want to say is that the examples that RICO or the civil society or all good examples that even the government do are picked up by youth as good examples that actually show that there is hope in the region. Once the youth are cooperating, once they create successes, we strongly believe that this is encouraging also the politicians in the region of Western Balkans to negotiate, to enter into dialogue much better, and to create or to help creating that culture of dialogue that Angelina was mentioning. But I would say we need also culture of managing and not fearing the conflicts, because in the end of the day, they can bring also prosperity, as you know, Harald. I mean, I can keep longer, but lastly, I just want to appeal to everybody to involve youth in all your activities, involve them meaningfully as they request, co-create with them the vision. Don't talk about the vision only in political level with politicians, with the big talks. Co-creation of this vision should go along with the vision of the youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Albert. You know, you're right. We're not very good in leaving a world for that's really workable for them. So the challenges of the youth will be immense in the next decades. At the same time, if you look at polls in all the countries in the region, a vast majority of the youth sees their future elsewhere than in their own country. So this is a huge challenge that politicians, decision makers in all the countries are facing already and will in the future. But okay, I would like to, we have relatively short time now. I would still like to get to the second point, which is mainly about, you know, we have a lot of peace agreements, a lot of processes functioning in the region or working in the region. The results are mixed. Not all of them have yielded results up to the expectations. I would like, now without going all the entire round, if any one of you would like to address this issue, and I'm interested more in the impact you think these agreements, processes, and their fallout, their political or societal fallout has on the EU integration processes. Some people see them as, you know, if you have a peace agreement institutionalized, people would say that it cements division rather than create a path for inclusion. There is a dichotomy there.
You know, so in European politics, we have the sustainability check. Every legislative decision has to be checked on the outcomes on sustainability, gender, and so on. Perhaps the region should make a European Union check. Every political decision has to be checked if it's leading the region, not only their own country, towards Europe or not. Every single. From Albin, from Alexander, every single decision.
I'm not
To only do decisions which are leading for all 6 towards Europe. Or at least to say, okay, this one is not fitting to our aim to get there. I think this would make Miro's job a bit easier.
It's easier
and
now.
perhaps even Christian's.
It's a matter of basically courage at the end of the day. I was a member of parliament chairing the European Affairs Committee when we did the Prespa agreement, and there was huge hesitation, also amongst our coalition partners, the Social Democrats, about reaching, because it was the ultimate betrayal, changing the name of the country in order to become part of the European Union and NATO. But once we were courageous and made the decision, that got rewarded by the citizens because we won the election subsequently. So people want to see determination. You're elected to make decisions, to lead, not to be led. That is why the Ohrid Framework Agreement is a successful story since 2001 and onwards. That is why the Prespa Agreement is also a successful story, because of courageous decisions and a determination to implement them onwards. So we would like to see also the same thing happening right now with the agreement that we have with Bulgaria, or the Ohrid agreement that we have between Kosovo and Serbia, bringing finally this reconciliation in the region, which we are talking about and moving forward. Honestly, I told you, since I've known for myself conflicts, since I've known for myself there's a crisis going on, either in the country, either in the region, either anywhere. So 2/3 of the history of our continent has been in wars. Only 1/3 of our history has been in peace. And the longest peace period of our continent is the European Union, which is a successful story. Therefore, we need to lead by example. You know, reconciliation in Europe started with cooperation and economy, coal. Same thing should happen in the Western Balkans. Let's focus on things that unite us, that makes us closer, not necessarily on the political issues. Let's make life better for our citizens. Focus on economy, focus on cooperation, on freedom of movement, freedom of trade, focus on legislation that benefits European integration. And then things will follow up. The political issues will become non-relevant once the citizens see a better life. We have a crisis in Kosovo yesterday. Everyone's concerned. I had a conversation with a businessman. He says nobody's entering the store to buy anything because people are afraid that a war is going to break up. So they want to save that little money that they have just in case they need to refuge. It's 2023, for God's sake. And we're still thinking of having some money in our pocket that we might need to flee our home and go seek for refuge in another country. Just one incident in Kosovo, or one incident here, or one incident in Bosnia. So yes, your job is difficult, but it won't be difficult if we have courageous leaders to move on throughout the region and make the ultimate sacrifice, sacrificing your political career, because it will be rewarded. Vumaro asked us to leave the government in order to make the constitutional change. While Mickoski was still speaking at the press conference, we responded immediately. He was unaware that we had responded yes, while he was still speaking. And we went a step forward. We said we give up the Albanian Prime Minister in the last 100 days, which is a coalition agreement. Now we are saying we are also abolishing the technical government. Anything you need, just vote. Because for us, between the EU and the UI, we chose the EU. Between the EU and the government, we chose the EU. We are confident that this will bring us double votes at the next elections because of this decision, and we see it reflecting in the ratings. So when people start seeing what will happen tomorrow rather than what will cause their decision today, I think we will move forward. Thank you.
If I
Thank
may.
you.
Yeah, peace agreements by definition are signed to stop the war and to bring peace. But of course, we cannot become hostages of these agreements like 20 years later, because the life evolves and the way we act should evolve as well. So of course the best and the worst example is the Dayton Peace Agreement, which people familiar with Bosnia and Herzegovina like to say, and rightly so, that it was the life vest that turned into a straitjacket, because the country did not find the courage to move on. So prefers to live with something that does not give the space to breathe, or certainly does not create conditions for Bosnia and Herzegovina to progress towards the European Union, but that was not the goal. The goal was to stop the war. Let's not blame the agreement 30 years later for not meeting the criteria of today. The best thing that can happen to peace agreements is to have them implemented quickly. Like the Ohrid agreement was implemented. It is a successful agreement. It not only stopped the war, but opened a new chapter for the country. Our agreement on the path to normalization of relations between Kosovo and Serbia, we are at the stage when the parties do not trust each other, and they are both telling us, let them do what you want them to do, and then I promise I will do my part. It doesn't work like that, of course. So our philosophy is you need to do something in order to get something, step by step, and build the trust. So again, not to become hostages of this peace agreement, because fortunately we live in peace, we don't need peace agreements, but we cannot ignore them. So to be able to move on, we need exactly what we spoke about in the previous. We need reconciliation, we need dialogue, we need courage, we need vision.
Thank you. State Secretary, from a country that's...
Maybe just... Yeah. Sorry. Kao neko ko je...
As someone who is all these years put effort for peace and security for all of our citizens in the Republic of Kosovo, as someone who believes in dialogue and normalization, as someone who voted for forming the association and not creating creating another as in Bosnia, as someone who supports all these agreements for the normalization of the situations, I believe that it's missing what was Angelina speaking, the cultural linkage, education in the schools. And as someone who has 3 children, I see the future of my kids only in Kosovo, not elsewhere, not bothered with the history of past, as I believe that not my kids should waste their time as we waste our time in the past. I believe that EU should give us more space and a better vision to help us in this process, to all be members of that family, as not to have any stereotypes or prejudice towards any community or despite any religion, as we are all human. We in Kosovo have been, there have been conflicts that have brought to the ethnic, we didn't have the freedom of movement, the freedom to be educated somewhere else, give us give us opportunity to be released by all of this so we can bring reforms to the country.
Maybe level, but on the level of including also other parts of society that can then bring up, actually support what the leaders can decide.
Thank you. Yeah. Or, yeah. No, please.
No, I was thinking how to, because that's your task, to wrap this up in a way that people leave the room also with some afterthought, because we all agree on everything. But the issue is that, no, it doesn't work out. The issue is that, you know, I'm glad that you brought it back in the end to agreements. And I think you had a little bit of a dark picture on agreements, because there are a lot of agreements that actually hold and work. And what is the task, the definite task of the politicians is to explain better what the agreements are about, what the process was, where parties were before and where here. And there's too much about those who signed up on the agreement, okay, it's done and that's it. And everybody just has to applaud. You know, I have the Prespa agreement in my bag here. I don't know how many people in the audience actually read the Prespa agreement. I hope everybody did. No, honestly, and this is just an example of communicating about these very difficult compromises. Can we communicate? Can we communicate what we have agreed to do, the compromises we made out of strength and courage? And this is, I think this is lacking a lot. The narratives, the stories of today are the stories of how can I beat the other? Instead of how actually have we agreed, even in parliaments, oppositions elsewhere, on matters of national interest for the future of the country. So I'm glad you bring it back to agreement. Can we also respect the word agree? We have agreed, we stick to it, we abide, and we implement. That's also, again, the European Union as well, so thanks.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I mean, this is something... what you just said was, you know, sometimes we don't see the forest for the trees. There has been progress, there has been a lot happening, so it's also a communication issue. So Sarrazin briefly, and then...
I just wanted to make two short points. Today, when everybody in the region will be in the European Union, it will not be much better regarding compromises and stuff. You know, I mean, listen, I mean, you say you had to change your name, which is, I mean, I value that. 15 years ago, Germany was paying 8 billion euro net, now it's 25 billion euro net a year. Okay, so we could also sit there and say like, okay, it will not become better. The point about the European Union is you meet each other at least one time a week and make a deal. So if you stop making compromises, after at least 2 or 3 weeks, you will have a problem. You will have a problem. So, and you will, every time you will have to meet again and have to meet again. So the culture will go on. Second point is, you said the European Community on Coal and Steel. Do you know why the high authority started with coal and steel? Everybody thinks because you can build weapons. No. It was because of the war aims of the First World War. In the First World War, when everybody saw that it's not working out, it was not possible to find a resolving of peace, because the war aims of the industries of France and Germany were so much overlapping that they couldn't agree. This led Europe into the Second World War. I think it's quite good that afterwards we found the solution, but we had to go this path through until 1950. It's quite horrible, and I really think this region should not do the same mistake, because Germany and France in 1960 were not able to find a deal on war aims regarding industries, that the whole continent, the whole world had to suffer again this stuff. I really think this is the historic momentum now, especially this year, especially in North Macedonia, and also regarding Kosovo and Serbia. You had the Ohrid Agreement, which Miro made. What historic achievements can be done if you implement this now? This can be a game changer. Constitutional change in North Macedonia can be such a game changer. We have it in our hands. If this works out this year, 23 will be a massive success story. If it's not working out, we will sit next year here and say, like, why everything is worse. It's in our hands.
Thank you. Sorry. Who's this? Have you seen anyone from Women today?
Today or in my life?
Yes. No, today, here at the conference. Or tomorrow.
Where?
I mean, we are preaching to converts here. And they need to hear these important messages and come along with us as well to make the decision.
If you don't want
They're not here. They're nowhere.
If you don't want me to start a conflict with the organizers of the forum, we've got 2 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. But I would say, let us wait and see what Wimbro is doing. I'm not just now already knowing what is going wrong or right. There are a lot of more players which have to be integrated. So I would invite indeed to continue the exchange as that's not a secret, we are doing in the best sense. I wanted to just not to come as a historian back to the war of 30 years, and Henry Kissinger, who has written in his New World Order, that we need indeed rules, but we need to understand these are living documents, and we have to adapt. As Dayton is somehow not applicable today, 30 years, I think we have to try to encourage on the work the younger generation, and probably you're surprised what could be helpful. I see in the country I am in that there is there could be more a civic society if you have an economic structure where the well-being of most of the people depends on getting loyalty to public services. You probably think 2 or thrice whether you would pose question, which we as young generation after 1945 in Germany have posed, necessarily posed, to our parents. What have you done? What has happened? So I'm missing a little bit this impulse of dynamics in the society. So I would give just at the end just a plea for try to get more private commitment and investment in these regions, and to give more independent possibility for people to decide about to whom they want to be loyal, not having any discrimination to be expected in which one mean or the other, which we can work out, and lots of people here, I think, know very well what I'm meaning.
Thank you very much. That could always almost be a wrap-up, but youth has 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Harald. Yeah, you're completely right, Mr. Schmidt. over 65%, actually two-thirds of young population in all the region of Western Balkans, which is 35 million youth at the moment in the region of Western Balkans, actually are eager to enter into some work in civil society. They want to be active. We let this group non-active, of course 52% will go in Europe or America or wherever. But my last message, I mean, would be, you asked about the agreement. RICO is actually a great positive agreement for when we talk about agreements of the leaders of the Western Balkans. And as such, really it poses a great example, but it doesn't mean that it is easy. I'm leading the organization with 6 governments, with interests that are differing all the time, and I know how hard it is to take care about a comma, a word, or use a name of, we don't use, for example, countries, we use contracting parties as a word. I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to talk, to make all this dialogue. But what I want to say for the end, and also to be positive, is that I think in order to have the sustainable long-term solutions for the decisions that we, I mean the leaders of the Western Balkans are bringing together here, we need to ensure ownership of these decisions, to really feel that all decisions are theirs and not something that are imposed. And this is also a culture that we should nurture and then continue towards the youth.
Thank you. Not bad, almost 30 seconds. All right, thank you very much for this. Maybe, I don't know, instead of wrap up, I can only come up with a bunch of punch words. So what do we have? Leadership, we had vision, we had historic moment, we had courage, we had pragmatism, we had integration, ownership.
Inclusivity.
So, inclusivity. Right, and the list could be a lot longer. Thank you very much for this panel.
We are to get more comfortable chairs next time.
This is complimentary from point of view.
You have an ally in that.